Imagine your life, filled with happiness and confidence, crumbling in an instant due to an unbelievable revelation. The story captures attention with its sharp plot twist and the complex emotions of the main character, who grapples with a spouse's infidelity, moral dilemmas, and the desire for reconciliation for the sake of their children. This compelling journey through the challenges of family relationships prompts reflection on the value of loyalty and responsibility in the modern world. My life was ordinary: work, home, family, and in general, I didn't need anything. My wife and I have come a long way. We have had ups and downs. I admired her for being with me, but I did not even suspect that going to the championship together would change my life so much that I would almost lose everything I had been striving for all these years. I was aware that my wife had a penchant for the extravagant lifestyle, but it never crossed my mind that she would eventually leave me for a wealthier young athlete. I trusted her completely, offering her the most sincere and precious love that others can only dream of. Unfortunately, she failed to appreciate everything I had done for her and resorted to infidelity with a wealthier young man. It's perplexing how women can change their affections seemingly overnight. One moment they love you for who you are, and the next they are enamored with someone else based on material wealth. I invested so much love and care into our relationship, assuming that she would be mine forever. I never anticipated that she would redirect all the love I gave her to someone who wasn't even family. It was a harsh lesson, but life goes on. I've come to realize that it's wiser to approach relationships with a level-headed perspective, using affection and love cautiously. Once a heart is broken, repairing it is no easy feat. Reflecting on my own experience, I recall meeting this amazing, lively, and respectful woman when I was 32. This happened several years ago when I was in my second year of studying philosophy and science at the university. Back then, I was engrossed in my studies, known as a bit of a nerd for my passion for science and philosophy. My wife, who was 30 at the time, was pursuing marketing studies at Boston College, conveniently close to my student accommodation. Our initial encounter was less than ideal. In my rush to class one day, I accidentally bumped into her, causing her to spill coffee on herself and my books containing crucial assignments. Instead of apologizing, I placed the blame on her and left her there. A week passed with guilt gnawing at me, prompting me to seek her out and make amends. Spotting her at a fast food restaurant, I approached her table, apologized for my earlier behavior, and expressed a genuine desire to make it up to her. She initially resisted, but eventually, she agreed to let me apologize properly and replace her ruined shirt. On a Saturday, this marked the beginning of our friendship as we spent time together exploring San Francisco and enjoying each other's company. I discovered the beauty of the city and the pleasures of life outside my usual routine of books and science labs. Our friendship blossomed, and I learned about her intelligence and business aspirations, including her dream of owning a marketing agency. Months passed, and our bond deepened. Her friends even complained about her neglecting them, but she remained unfazed. She broadened my perspective on life, emphasizing that there's more to experience beyond academic pursuits. During an indoor picnic as friends, an accidental kiss changed the dynamics of our relationship. While unintended, it set the stage for a more profound connection. I had desired to kiss her ever since the day we went to the mall, and surprisingly, she kissed me back. From there, things escalated quickly, and before I knew it, we were passionately kissing, and our clothes ended up on the floor. I hadn't anticipated her reaction. Although she was lively and carefree, I didn't think she would be open to such intimacy. Despite that unexpected turn, we continued engaging in such activities sporadically for about 2 months without defining our connection. It was merely a physical relationship. Eventually, I initiated a conversation about how we labeled our encounters. To my surprise, she questioned why I referred to it as mere sex. In her view, we were already boyfriend and girlfriend. I hadn't received that memo, but I was relieved when she suggested transitioning into a formal relationship instead of just being friends. Our relationship progressed smoothly despite disapproval from her friends. I appreciated that she wasn't ashamed of me, and our connection deepened each day. Being a self-proclaimed nerd, I found solace in her understanding of my passions, often accompanying me to historical sites. She cared for me in various ways, like surprising me with home-cooked meals when I hadn't eaten. My love for her grew stronger as we dated for a year until we decided to elevate our relationship. During that time, I secured an internship as an assistant professor in philosophy, a step towards my dream career as a political scientist. The financial stability allowed me to get my own place and propose to Rachel, who had moved in with me 2 months after moving in. She started her own social media marketing platform, thriving in her career. Proud of her accomplishments, I proposed, and she gladly accepted. As she managed her social media marketing responsibilities, I admired her dedication and love for taking care of me. Our relationship flourished, and she became an integral part of my family. Despite her family being in Brazil and our busy lives, we managed to connect with them through Skype. 9 months later, we decided to have a low-key wedding with close friends and family. I invited a few colleagues, considering my brothers as my closest friends. Little did I know that this seemingly perfect life would lead me into a deceptive and unfaithful situation. 5 years later, with Rachel running her successful marketing agency and our son on the way, life took a turn. Balancing parenthood with our busy careers led us to hire a stay-at-home nanny, and frequent travel became a norm. As life unfolded, I realized the changes that had occurred in those 5 years. Rachel excelled in her career, and we welcomed our firstborn son with joy and love. However, unforeseen challenges lay ahead, revealing the complexities of our seemingly perfect life. Being occupied with various commitments, the years passed swiftly. Our son grew, and 2 years after his birth, we welcomed twins into our family. Each day, our family expanded and strengthened, accompanied by a steady flow of income that brought happiness. One day, the opportunity to attend the Olympic Games in Tokyo arose, prompting us to embark on a family vacation. It was a delightful experience spending quality time together, particularly watching basketball games, as I am a devoted fan of the sport. My background as a political scientist proved beneficial when we secured VIP seats, and my wife seized the chance to promote her agency, propelling her business to new heights. The basketball game concluded with the emergence of a talented player from Canada displaying remarkable skills and unwavering passion. Although not ranked among the best, he stood out as the greatest in my eyes. After the game, while greeting players and coaches, I noticed a peculiar interaction between my wife and the young athlete. Their exchanged glances raised a hint of discomfort and jealousy within me. Unsure if I was reading too much into the situation, despite my love for my wife, I couldn't bear the thought of any man eyeing her inappropriately. Upon returning from Tokyo, a shift occurred in our household. Rachel became engrossed in her phone, neglecting our children even when the nanny was absent. On one occasion, I arrived home to find smoke filling the house, discovering that Rachel had burned the dinner due to her preoccupation. Expressing concerns about her being an absent parent, she became defensive, asserting her own busyness and the children's familial connections. The tension escalated, prompting me to move our children to my family's house. Months later, as Rachel's behavior persisted and she resisted counseling, I grew anxious about the precarious state of our marriage, fearing its potential collapse. I resorted to unconventional means, seeking help from a friend with computer expertise to hack into my wife's phone. Recognizing the invasion of privacy, I acknowledged it as a last resort to uncover the truth behind her changed behavior. Security codes made it challenging to access Rachel's devices, but with the help of a friend, I managed to uncover some shocking discoveries. I believed I knew my wife, having thought I made a wise choice in marriage. However, it became evident that I was mistaken. The revelation that she was engaged in flirtatious interactions, including sharing explicit content with a much younger basketball player, left me stunned. The emotional impact was profound as I grappled with the realization that the athlete involved was a minor, 10 years younger than my wife. The unethical nature of her actions deeply disgusted me. The fact that she didn't consider the potential consequences for our family and her business, given her successful marketing agency, intensified my anger. My investigation, aided by a friend, unveiled that they shared moments together after an Olympic game in Tokyo, during which I was left at a guest house with our children. The changes in her behavior upon our return were indicative of a significant shift in our relationship. Further revelations exposed the athlete as the youngest and wealthiest basketball player in Canada. In my professional context, what Rachel engaged in with the young man was considered reprehensible, as adults should not engage intimately with minors, particularly with such a substantial age gap. The discovery shattered my confidence as a man, leading me to question my role in our marriage. I harbored a sense of betrayal and a desire for retribution against both Rachel and the athlete. However, I chose to remain silent for a few weeks, hoping for a change. During this period, I discreetly monitored Rachel's activities through a bug planted on her phone. When I attempted to rejuvenate our marriage by preparing a special dinner, she turned up late, providing a feeble excuse about work. Suspicious of her prolonged absence, I observed that she had been at a hotel for an extended period, contrary to her usual client meetings. Realizing that I couldn't salvage the relationship, I focused on being a present parent for my children, spending more time at the family house. Rachel continued her rendezvous at the hotel, prompting me to eventually follow her. Witnessing her affectionate behavior with the young athlete pushed me to confront the situation. I encountered them, and one thing that caught my attention was the intense glare my wife directed at me. She looked at me with so much animosity in her eyes, and the spark that used to be present when she looked at me was absent. She seemed like a completely different person, and I struggled to find words to describe it. She questioned my presence there, expressing embarrassment and disbelief. The woman in front of me was unrecognizable. She instructed me to go home and never attempt to find her again, treating me as if I were one of our children. It dawned on me that I had lost her, my wife, but she wasn't going to leave without a fight. A week later, our family lawyer called, summoning me to her office. There, I was handed an envelope containing divorce papers filed by my wife. She had discarded our 10 years of marriage for a younger athlete she had met a year ago. Life can be unexpectedly harsh to those who respect it. Imagine losing someone you've been married to for 10 years, and the worst thing is not losing them to someone your age, but to someone 10 years younger. It seems unfair and makes you doubt their value. This often leads people to drink alcohol, become depressed, or even commit sins because of the problems they face in marriage. Marriage opinions vary. Some advocate for marrying young to have a lifetime to understand one's partner, while others argue that marrying older allows for sufficient time to learn about the person. However, I view marriage as an underrated scam where one party often suffers at the hands of the other. Personally, I can't envision getting married again. Having learned the hard way, I refused to sign the divorce papers, as doing so would mean she'd be entitled to 50% of my possessions. I sought legal intervention to fight for my assets. I couldn't let someone who violated their vows walk away freely with almost everything I had worked hard for. While I would also get 50% of what she owned, her share was significantly smaller than my accomplishments. I contemplated taking everything she owned and leaving her with only 20%, considering the injustice I felt. I discovered she had changed her phone numbers, signifying her desire to sever ties completely. However, I couldn't let her win, especially with my children's inheritance at stake. I tracked down her new number and called her anonymously. Surprisingly, she didn't recognize my voice, indicating that she had erased me from her mind. Determined not to let her win, I arranged a meeting with her at a nearby cafe. It struck me how easily she agreed without questioning the reason for the meetup. During our encounter, she almost caused unnecessary drama, but I managed to calm her down, tapping into my knowledge of the buttons to press. I reminded myself of the importance of conducting background checks before entering a relationship to avoid such surprises. 2 days later, I met up with Rachel, and despite initial tension, I managed to defuse the situation. I reminded her of our history as husband and wife, hoping to convey that despite everything, I still cared for her as the mother of my children. This experience led me to vow never to enter a relationship without thoroughly investigating the person's background to prevent similar surprises in the future. My spouse requested my signature on the divorce documents to set her free. She proposed that I receive 75% of her company while she retains the remaining 25%. However, the situation escalated when she started hurling insults, claiming I would only get my share when she was no longer around. Despite my intention to negotiate calmly and civilly, she opted for a confrontational approach. In an attempt to bring reason into the discussion, I presented incriminating pictures and videos of her with a young boy, obtained through a friend's phone hacking skills. Astonished by the compelling evidence, she initially dismissed it as photoshopped. I clarified that further discussion was futile, and we would settle matters in court during the divorce proceedings. Despite my lack of interest in her company, I assumed a tough stance for the sake of our children, considering how the assets would be divided. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, I was surprised to find her accompanied by her new boyfriend. This perplexed me, as I believed the court only required the involvement of the married individuals and their representatives. Nevertheless, I proceeded without questioning, and my legal representative asserted that she had committed adultery, making her undeserving of any of my assets. She responded with unnecessary tantrums, insisting on claiming what was rightfully mine. Disappointed by her greed and selfishness, I questioned her priorities, especially regarding the future of our children. Despite my initial disappointment, things took an unexpected turn when she attempted to tarnish my name on social media. Strangely, it backfired, and her new boyfriend ended up exposing the incriminating content, severing ties with her. I later discovered that he had returned to his home country, leaving her with nothing. Unbeknownst to her, she had unknowingly signed the 75% under our children's names, thinking it was awarded to me. Despite feeling a twinge of sympathy, I couldn't help but believe that karma was taking its course, dealing with her harshly. I returned to my family's house and asked for forgiveness. My mother, known for her kindness, welcomed me warmly. My reputation was tarnished, and my business failed, losing 25% of its value. Although 75% remained intact, they were no longer registered in my name. My life turned into chaos, which led me into a state of depression and eventually to alcohol consumption. My mother urgently called me, revealing the extent of the situation and urging me to come home. Despite my initial reluctance considering the recent conflicts over asset division, I yielded to my mother's plea. Witnessing Rachel's distress, I decided to help, not out of personal desire, but due to my mother's request and the impact on my children. It was revealed that Rachel had been residing in my family home for 6 months, a fact my mother had kept from me to avoid my disapproval. Despite my animosity towards Rachel, I acknowledged the necessity of intervening for the sake of our children. Following my mother's advice, I took Rachel to recover in a Texas rehab facility. The 9-month rehabilitation proved successful, restoring Rachel to the person I once loved. Despite her apologies and revelations about an abusive relationship with the young athlete who had deceived her and caused her company's downfall, I remained indifferent. My focus was on ensuring she became a responsible mother to our children. Although forgiveness was extended, I made it clear that a romantic reunion was not an option. The only connection between us was our shared responsibility for our children. Once assured of Rachel's recovery, I assigned her a role as CEO at her marketing agency, which now belonged to our children. I emphasized the need for her to find a new place to live, maintaining boundaries to prevent her from getting too comfortable in my family home. While she could visit the children, it was established that she wouldn't live with them. Reflecting on my actions, I moved forward from the past, focusing on the present and future. I questioned whether my handling of the situation was appropriate and if helping Rachel despite her past actions was the right decision. This story makes you think about the complexity of family relationships and how unpredictable twists of fate can be. It underscores the importance of honesty, loyalty, and mutual understanding in marriage, as well as how deeply family values can be tested as a result of unforeseen events. Story 2. My childhood was turbulent, and I used to solve problems in the harshest ways. I grew and developed, securing an excellent position and finding what seemed to be a faithful wife with whom I had the happiest years of my life. However, at some point, an anonymous person sent me photos depicting my wife's infidelity with another man. This ignited a thirst for revenge within me, and she will assuredly regret her actions. As I sat ready for work at the breakfast table, engrossed in the morning paper, Tracy, my wife, was still preparing for her workday in the bedroom. There was nothing particularly notable about this morning compared to the countless workdays of the past year. However, as I scanned the front page, a headline caught my attention, confirming a revelation forewarned by Cosimo the night before. The news article reported the murder of a man, Raymond Rowland, who was found brutally beaten and strangled in his residence. Notably, Raymond was an employee at the beauty real estate agency where Tracy also worked. At present, the police had no suspects, and the investigation had just commenced. With this unsettling information, I found no reason to continue perusing the newspaper and placed it aside. Tracy, entering the dining room, appeared particularly captivating, yet there was a palpable erosion in our marriage over the past year, evident in our lack of morning pleasantries. Communication had dwindled, especially following a heated argument concerning her extended working hours. Tracy's newfound aloofness troubled me deeply, as it was a departure from the warm and affectionate qualities she displayed during our courtship and early marriage. The inevitable end of our relationship seemed imminent. As Tracy read the article about Raymond Rowland's murder, she reacted with shock, spitting out her coffee and rushing to the bathroom, appearing on the verge of nausea. Despite her distress, I remained silent, feeling no inclination to address the matter with her. With a sense of detachment, I proceeded to place my coffee cup in the dishwasher, picked up my briefcase, and left for work without inquiring about Tracy's well-being. Her emotional state no longer held significance to me. My name is Joshua Nixon, age 29, with Italian roots from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My youth was marked by trouble, associating with a gang of Italian boys who considered themselves the Junior Mafia. I'll omit most of the negative aspects of our activities and focus on an incident that significantly altered my wayward behavior. Ku and I were inseparable, sharing the same age and social circle. The primary distinction between Kimo and me lay in our minds. I'm not suggesting Kimo lacked intelligence, he just struggled to navigate legal issues, often getting caught by the police. Despite our shared involvement in unlawful activities, one night, Casso and I broke into a warehouse at the port, seeking items to steal for profit. As we entered through a side window, the guards, having observed us, awaited our exit. While slipping back out with several boxes of MP3 players, one guard apprehended Cosimo as I climbed through the window. The second guard attempted to seize me, but I countered by hitting him with a box. Subsequently, I tackled the other guard, allowing Cosimo to escape. The second guard subdued me, and the situation turned unfavorable when the police arrived. They, along with the guards, found amusement in examining my battered body. I spent 2 weeks in prison, followed by probation. Kimo apologized multiple times for fleeing when the guards apprehended me. I reassured him, explaining that his escape was preferable given the potential consequences, considering his prior arrest. My parents were furious and embarrassed by my arrest. My father resorted to corporal punishment. Consequently, I was enrolled in St. Peter's Catholic High School to instill discipline. By my senior year, influenced by a priest mentor, I altered my lifestyle, left the gang, and achieved enough to attend the University of Pennsylvania. I excelled in college, earning a degree in human resources, leading to a successful career. 3 years post-graduation, I met Tracy Tate at an HR seminar, and she became the first woman to make me contemplate leaving my single life. Our courtship, marked by Tracy's multifaceted personality, faced challenges due to her stubborn nature. Despite her troubled past of being abandoned as a baby, our relationship flourished, and we married in a small church ceremony. We decided to delay having children until financial stability allowed Tracy to be a full-time mother, a decision met with disapproval from my parents. In the 3rd year of our marriage, complications arose when Tracy's company was acquired, leading to the elimination of her job. Although upset, she eventually found a new position as an office manager at a real estate agency. I supported her during unemployment, sensing occasional resentment towards my enjoyable job. Tracy's mood swings, particularly during her period, persisted for a while, but as she settled into her new job, our married life improved. Tracy became more enthusiastic about her work, even pursuing real estate courses, and our relationship thrived. For me, it turned into a mixed situation. On the positive side, I was gradually advancing up the management hierarchy in my company. Having devoted 5 years to my work, the future seemed promising until a merger with an Atlanta-based company reshaped my job responsibilities. I was tasked with integrating Atlanta into our corporate structure, involving training their staff and managing staff reductions when necessary. Despite my enthusiasm for these new responsibilities, the downside was that it required frequent out-of-town trips, which didn't sit well with Tracy. Initially, I managed to be home on weekends, easing Tracy's concerns about my absence. However, over time, my weekend returns failed to compensate for the time spent away, leading to Tracy developing a stubborn mindset. She began to insinuate that I enjoyed being away and hinted at the possibility of an extramarital affair during my time in Atlanta. Despite my efforts, including calling her during the day, sending flowers, and humorous cards, her coldness persisted. The Atlanta staff training concluded after nearly 6 months, signaling the end of my days as a frequent traveler. Additionally, I received a promotion at corporate headquarters, anticipating that these positive changes would alter Tracy's attitude. To my disappointment, when I ceased traveling, Tracy increased her overtime at the agency. When I questioned her about it, she sarcastically mentioned working for a promotion and implied it was time for me to experience solitude in the evenings. Our intimate life also dwindled. Recently, Tracy informed me of her weekend plans to attend a special orientation session with colleagues, leaving me out of the discussion. Despite my attempts to understand her overtime and communicate about it, Tracy seemed distant. Feeling a desire for a weekend away from home, I decided not to inform her about my plans to spend time with friends. The morning she left for Atlantic City, I casually inquired about contacting her during the trip. Tracy calmly rejected the idea, asserting that she would be with influential people and didn't want to be disturbed by my calls. Respecting her wishes, I refrained from pressing the matter. Once in Atlantic City, I met up with my longtime friend Casso, who was delighted to see me after over a year. We spent Saturday evening at a local bar where tempting offers were presented by young women. Despite the allure, I remained true to my wedding vows, declining any advances. Cosimo, surprised at my loyalty, remarked on the seriousness with which I took marital commitment. The next day, we attended a Steelers game, enjoying the atmosphere despite the cold and windy weather in Pittsburgh. The weekend away provided a temporary escape, but the challenges in my relationship with Tracy lingered in the back of my mind. Despite the camaraderie sought, I opted to excuse myself, considering the looming challenges at work and the return of my wife, Tracy, that night. However, Tracy did not return on Sunday, casting doubts about recent events in our marriage. Contemplating our relationship, I felt a sense of impending doom. Though every marriage faces challenges, ours seemed to have evolved into something more distressing. The workday unfolded as anticipated, with high-level meetings and a harassment lawsuit against the company adding to the stress. At 6:30, I finally had a chance to check my emails, discovering a dozen messages from staff. Amid them, one email titled "Who Will Be the Last to Know" caught my attention. Expecting humor, I was instead confronted with a photo of Tracy passionately embracing another man, accompanied by a message prompting me to click a link for more details. A chill ran down my spine as I hesitated, eventually clicking the link. Another photo revealed Tracy and the man in a compromising position, accompanied by a text urging me to click further. The subsequent image shattered my world. Tracy, the love of my life, exposed as unfaithful. The text beneath revealed the person responsible, Raymond Rowland, her photography partner. In the face of this betrayal, a quiet determination overcame me. I refused to tolerate infidelity and betrayal. Revenge now occupied my thoughts. The sender of the incriminating emails was unknown, leaving me with questions about their motives. As I inserted the CD to make copies, I vowed to unveil the truth and make those responsible pay for the deliberate and mortal insult inflicted upon me. After discovering the program that deleted the email from my hard drive, I settled into my swivel chair, attempting to comprehend why Tracy had betrayed our marriage. The only plausible explanation I could fathom was blaming it on Tracy's split personality. Even so, if she desired a divorce, I was willing to grant it. With no children involved, we could both move on from this shattered marriage. However, my retaliation would be swift and thorough. I harbored no intentions of showing mercy. My plan began taking shape. Exiting the office building, I turned the corner to a payphone and dialed an untraceable cell phone. Speaking to Ku, I expressed that it was time for him to repay the debt he owed me. Upon returning home around 8:30, I found Tracy already watching TV. Instead of rushing to greet me, she merely looked up and mentioned my late arrival. In response, I explained that I came home late. As I proceeded to the kitchen, little was said between us. I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and retreated to the spare room, transformed into an office, locking the door behind me. In this country, when someone is convicted of a serious crime, they typically face either the death penalty or life imprisonment. My revenge plan included 1 death penalty and 1 life sentence. I required some solitude to contemplate the remaining details. Ku would play a role in settling the score with Mr. Raymond Rowland, while my vengeance against Tracy demanded a personal effort. Over the next days, I continued sending flowers to Tracy's office, creating an appearance of a caring husband. I made a dinner reservation near her workplace, leaving messages for her to join me, but she never showed up. I ensured the waitress gave our table to someone else, emphasizing how my wife had left me. Tracy returned home later with no explanation, and I found myself indifferent to whatever she had to say. The wheels of revenge were set in motion. A courier delivered an envelope marked personal and confidential, containing a single sheet instructing me to provide a reliable alibi for the next evening. It mentioned a name, Larry Maynard, and a phone number. After memorizing the details, I shredded the paper and scattered the pieces near the office building. Coming home early one evening, I changed clothes, poured a drink, and enjoyed jazz, asserting my dominance. Tracy returned without confrontation, assessed the situation, and left again. As she came home later and slid into bed, silence prevailed. Thursday night, a typical poker night, became my ironclad alibi. Playing with guys from the office at the old Stagecoach bar, I gathered useful information. Early to bed, the clock read 2:35, with no sound or movement from Tracy. I slept peacefully, aware of the events earlier that evening. Now that Raymond Rowland faced the death penalty, it was time to sentence the second criminal. Tracy's punishment would commence shortly after my phone call, providing a sense of satisfaction and justice. Whatever twisted aspect of her personality led her to disrespect me in the most disgraceful manner was no longer my concern. I no longer felt any sympathy for the woman I had once loved wholeheartedly. The impending retribution she was about to face was a consequence of her own actions. The police interviewed all employees at the beauty real estate agency, receiving intriguing yet conflicting statements. Tracy, among others, was questioned multiple times. Detective Andrew Kruger visited our house and inquired about any information I might have regarding Raymond Rowland. I explained that I had only met Raymond once at a Christmas party organized by Beauty. Apart from that occasion, I had no further contact with Mr. Rowland. The detective probed, suggesting that Raymond and Tracy might have had a more than professional relationship. I assured him of my complete trust in my wife's fidelity, dismissing any doubts. Raymond Rowland's funeral occurred on Tuesday. I observed Tracy in mourning attire, the same one she wore to my mother's funeral. She didn't invite me to join her at Raymond's funeral. Throughout the following week, Tracy attempted serious discussions about our relationship, but my cold demeanor swiftly halted her efforts. Reconciliation was beyond consideration. I held the power to end this charade at any moment. 3 weeks after Raymond's murder, the police investigation seemed to stall, lacking new leads. Some suggested the possibility of Raymond being targeted by a loan shark or bookmaker. Tracy's mental state deteriorated over these weeks. She appeared more distressed and confused. Despite witnessing her struggles, I offered no help or comfort. I harbored thoughts of her suffering for her betrayal. After 3 weeks, I contacted Larry, who had a plan. Read Friday morning, I left for work before Tracy was up, avoiding a final encounter in my house. The sand in the hourglass had run out. A car with two men parked across the street awaited. The abduction unfolded at a four-way stop intersection, executed with Delta Force precision in less than 30 seconds. Tracy was injected with a needle, freed from her seatbelt, and placed in the passenger seat. The men swiftly drove away without any witnesses. At 11 a.m. on that morning, at a bank on the east side of town, a woman resembling Tracy withdrew $225,000 from our joint account. She had the necessary identification, and a cashier's check was issued. After a brief wait, the woman left the bank. At the American Airlines ticket counter, a line of passengers witnessed someone who looked like Tracy. She presented her boarding pass, photo ID, and passport, all reserved online the previous night. The first leg of the trip was destined for Kennedy. I boarded a flight from Pittsburgh to Kennedy Airport in New York, Flight 951 to Rio de Janeiro. The departure time was 4:45 p.m. Upon reaching Kennedy Airport, I caught an American Airlines flight to Brazil at 10:30 p.m. on the same day. It was an overnight flight, and I was accompanied by passenger Tracy Nixon. Concerned about Tracy's absence, I waited until Saturday afternoon before contacting the police to report her missing. Detective Andrew Kruger surprisingly was the officer who came to gather the information. I informed Detective Kruger that Tracy hadn't returned home at her usual time. Attempts to reach her via her cell phone proved futile, as it indicated she was out of coverage. Upon contacting Tracy's close friend, Emily Holt, I discovered that Tracy hadn't shown up for work the previous day and she hadn't made any contact. Detective Kruger, making cryptic notes in his small notebook, periodically looked up at me. Eventually, he began inquiring about my marriage, questioning whether any issues might be related to Tracy's disappearance. I reiterated what I had told him before, affirming that our marriage was excellent and I couldn't fathom any reason for Tracy to voluntarily vanish. When he raised the possibility of my involvement in foul play, I vehemently denied it, emphasizing my love for my wife. I shared that lying to the police was a skill acquired in my early years while working with the youth mafia. 3 days later, Detective Kruger visited my office during working hours, possibly to assess me personally. After being shown into my office, he inquired about any news on Tracy's whereabouts. I wore an expression of concern as I questioned him about any developments. Detective Kruger then provided information about Tracy's activities after leaving our house, mentioning sightings at Denny's restaurant and Allegan National Bank. The shocking revelation came when he disclosed that Tracy had withdrawn $25,000 from our joint savings account. My disbelief was evident, and I expressed concern, insisting that Tracy hadn't mentioned any need for such a significant sum. Detective Kruger, confident in the evidence, mentioned CCTV footage and the cashier's check process. He suggested that I would identify Tracy in the security footage at the bank. I maintained my conviction that there must be a mistake, reiterating that Tracy and I discussed everything in our marriage. Detective Kruger, carefully observing my reactions, then delivered the most alarming news. Tracy had purchased plane tickets to New York and Rio de Janeiro. Her car was found in the long-term parking lot at the airport, indicating her departure on Friday afternoon and subsequent flight to Rio after 10:30 p.m. The Rio de Janeiro police were contacted, but there was no trace of Tracy upon her arrival. Overwhelmed, I vehemently denied the possibility of Tracy taking such actions, expressing disbelief and declaring my love for her. Detective Kruger, seemingly considering a connection to a previous murder case, questioned whether it had any relevance, prompting my vehement rejection of any such association. My wife was not involved in the murder you questioned her about. In fact, she was never accused of anything related to the case. Although you initially considered her a suspect, we never charged her, and she was merely on your list of suspects based on the opinions of others we spoke to. You must be joking. First, you talk about my wife leaving the country, and now you're accusing her of being involved in Roland's murder? You better have more evidence than just office gossip to support such claims. I drilled my eyes into his head, expressing my disbelief. We're still working on the case, Mr. Nixon, and now that your wife has left the country, suspicions about her involvement have increased. He paused for a long time and then mentioned evidence at the crime scene suggesting the murder was more than a simple gangland hit for money. The wounds on Roland's body indicated a sexual overtone, with torture and beating occurring for hours before strangulation, he explained. I chuckled quietly, questioning how my petite wife could be capable of such brutality. Your accusations are becoming more absurd with each passing moment. Perhaps, Mr. Nixon, but the evidence so far points to your wife's involvement. Maybe someone else helped her. He paused, licked his lips, and insinuated that I might be that other person. I retorted, rejecting the idea before he could say more. Despite suspecting my involvement, they couldn't find any evidence against me due to a solid alibi for the time of the murder. Let me clarify. You come here suggesting my wife left the country because of her involvement in a murder, implicating me as a likely accomplice. I paused, staring straight at him. If that's all, then this meeting is over. I got up, opened the door, indicating it was time for him to leave. Kruger rose and headed towards the door without extending a hand, and I didn't either. After he left, I leaned back in my swivel chair, convinced that Kruger's visit aimed to gather information rather than provide any substantial updates on the cases. I carefully thought about every statement and question he made. Although Kruger believed I might be involved in the cases, my alibi remained reliable, playing poker the night Roland was killed and being in meetings the day Tracy went missing. It was now 2 weeks since Tracy disappeared, and I hadn't heard anything from Larry or Koo. Despite feeling watched at times, my daily routines were normal and showed no signs of evasion or attempts to hide something. I called Kruger every other time, seeking more clarity on the investigations. On the day I sought information about my missing wife, the Brazilian police had no new updates despite her arrival in Rio. There was no evidence of Tracy's presence. While waiting at home and ordering pizza from Domino's as I watched football on TV, the pizza delivery guy arrived with my order. Surprisingly, I found an envelope on top of the pizza box. Opening it, I discovered a message instructing me to be at St. Peter's Basilica for the 10 a.m. Mass the next morning. During communion, I was to slip out through the east side door where a dark Ford Crown Victoria would be waiting. Holding the note, I realized it might be the last time I saw Tracy before Larry orchestrated her departure from the country. Larry ensured a 2-day delay to solidify the cover-up plan, leaving the police with limited evidence. Darkness enveloped my bedroom as I contemplated the nightmare of the past month and a half. An email triggered a chain of events revealing the dark side rooted in my ancestral history. St. Peter's Basilica, with its large congregation, provided cover for my movements. Exiting during communion, I found the waiting dark Ford sedan, leading to a large warehouse where I met Larry for the first time. Larry, maintaining a stony expression, warned me about Tracy's difficult weeks. Unfazed, I entered a well-lit room to find Tracy chained, marked with a coiled snake on her lower back. Larry revealed she was now a broken woman, prepared for a new life. Tracy stood motionless, her eyes devoid of vitality. Questioning Larry about her condition, he disclosed her compliance, emphasizing her submission. My confrontation with Tracy exposed her silent suffering. I reminded her that her adultery had led to Raymond's death and her ongoing torment. Larry assured me she would be well cared for like prized horses and cattle. Leaving the room, I returned to St. Peter's Basilica, blending in with the 11 a.m. Mass crowd. The Ford sedan transported me back, and as I drove home, I grappled with the tight knot in my stomach, seeking solace in alcohol. 3 years had passed since that encounter, and Tracy had become a distant memory. I sold the house we once shared, and both abduction cases were relegated to unsolved files. Marriage was no longer an option for me, convinced that the troubles outweighed the benefits. Reflecting on my parents' warnings, I acknowledged their wisdom. Unbeknownst to me, the email informing me about Tracy's affair came from Emily Holt, Raymond's former mistress, seeking revenge. The photos she possessed remained a mystery, and I never thanked her for her revelation. This is a story about the complexity of human relationships, about how secrets and betrayal can ruin lives. Your character was drawn into dangerous games because of their sense of justice and desire to uncover the truth. Despite all the difficulties, your decision to help Tracy start a new life far from you shows your deep, compassionate side. However, it's also a story about losing faith in romantic relationships and struggling with the heavy burden of the past.